Well, it has been quite some time, but finally, after a couple of week hiatus, we're back with Chris Dunnavant, our weekly wildlife conversation here on the weekend with Anthony Opperman. Chris joined us from the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. And Chris, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the wedding episode of this show a couple of weeks ago. Such a big episode, such a big event, Wes McElroy's wedding, that we had to take a couple of weeks off. Actually, it was just the Olympics that preempted our coverage. But from what I understand, you were actually out fishing during the wedding episode.
I was listening. I had my smartphone and iHeartRadio, and I could listen to the show and enjoyed it while I was fishing, catching fish, listening to you. You know, it was a nice Saturday morning. I enjoyed it. So it's a great show, and congratulations to Wes. It was good stuff.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you were able to get out on the pond. Any big catches for the day?
Yeah, actually, I had a great morning. It's hot summertime. I know once before we talked about the summertime fishing in the heat, and I tend to gravitate towards the get out there early and get off the water before it gets really hot. That seems to be what I favor. And so my plan was I got out there, fished bright and early, had a great day, caught some nice fish, and the show ended about 11 o'clock, and that was right when I wanted to go. So as I was leaving this pond that I'm a member of, there's a point that comes out, and one time I brought a depth finder out there, and I saw that I graphed it and noticed that there was a nice drop off on the end of the point away from the bank, had some cover on it, and I've fished it a few times and haven't since then, but haven't had the success. But I've always kind of kept in the back of my mind that one day that little spot's going to pay off. I'm going to be there in the right conditions, the right timing. So I figured, hey, I'm right over here, so before I head in, put the boat up, I'm going to make a few casts with this. And I had a Carolina rig on, which is perfect for fishing something that's offshore, helps you can really make some good bottom contact and find that cover, that drop off, that structure. So I got out there and lined up, and my first cast was perfect. I dragged it just a few times and immediately started feeling the cover, and I'm just anticipating this big bite at any moment. I just know it. And then all of a sudden my rig just locks up and I'm hung. And it's like, oh, first cast. I was perfect. I was, all this anticipation of getting to probe this structure and having a chance of catching a good fish. And immediately I'm hung up and just was dejected inside. Just as I'm trolling, motoring over to it, I'm just like, why does this have to happen? My first cast. Why can't I just at least get a few casts and at least think I got a good chance at it? But I'm going to ruin this spot. I got to get over top of it, get unhung, and I'm going to ruin it. And so it's over, and it's the end of the day, so I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to head in. And the little boathouse where we keep the boats, it's about 50 yards down the bank, and it's not really a special bank. It's just a plain bank. And so I got it unhung and fixed my worm and just kind of made a half-hearted cast over to the bank and put the trolling motor on low and just going to head in and make a couple casts on my way in. And so I just made this cast over towards the bank, and I don't even believe my rig hit the bottom, and it just tightened up, and I set the hook, and it was just this real hard, fighting, heavy fish, and it's just pulling hard, and it jumps, and it's just this huge bass. It ended up weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Almost 22 inches long, and I was amazed that, it really is kind of one of those lessons where you think, I was really dejected about, ruining the spot on the first cast and felt like I blew it. But really, if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't trolling motored over to that area, right over the spot to get unhung, I would have never made that cast that I caught that big one on. So, it's kind of a lesson there that sometimes when things aren't going your way, they're not going well, they're just leading you to something that's going to be really good, a good opportunity. And so really nice way to end the day.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason, right?
That's right.
Who knew that the wedding episode of this show and getting you to compare fishing to marriage and being married life will get you thinking so philosophical now about fishing.
Well, it's just a philosophical day, Maybe that just was part of the theme of the day while I was listening to that and then fishing and experiencing that. But yeah, there's good lessons in that. I find that to be true, and I'm sure everyone can relate that anything that you do a lot, you can make analogies and comparisons and to life and to other things in life. And so that was one of those good little lessons, that reminder of keep your chin up. Sometimes when things aren't going well, it's just something really special is right around the corner.
Maybe that's an idea to consider for a show down the road. It's just to have the entire show life lessons learned from sports, and we could do a segment on life lessons learned from baseball, life lessons learned from fishing, so on and so forth.
I'm sure everybody would be willing to volunteer their philosophies on those things, and that would be a great show. I'd love to be a part of it.
Chris Dunnavant from the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries joined us, our weekly wildlife conversation here on the weekend with Anthony Oprin, back after a couple of weeks off. And Chris, we're here now in the middle of August, but there's definitely some news coming out at the end of July, and it's amazing, all these records that have been falling as of late. Over the last year, state records, world records, all of them coming down here in Virginia.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Our latest state record that came out, the State Record Committee just approved recently the new freshwater drum record, weighing 26 pounds 8 ounces, which eclipses the old record of 22 pounds. So quite a big fish caught on Bugs Island Lake, another state record. And when I saw this email come through with the press release of the announcement that the State Record Committee had approved it, got me thinking, it seems like this has been a reoccurring theme, that we've got all these records. And I looked back, and beginning in June of last year, we had the state record blue catfish, which was actually then verified as the new world record, 143 pounds. Then in January of this year, we had the state record striper caught, the saltwater record. Then in March, we had the spotted bass state record. And also in May, now we don't have a state record or any kind of verification for the state, recognition in the state for this fish, but a snakehead was caught that is a pending world record on the Occoquan River, which is in the Virginia side of the Potomac. The Occoquan dumps into the Potomac.
Yeah, I lived up near there when I was in Northern Virginia. Never heard of a snakehead, though. Can you help me out a little bit? Exactly what kind of fish is that?
Oh, yeah. It's the snakehead is an invasive species, and there's been in a few years ago there was a lot of in the fishing world, a lot of press about it, a lot of questions, a lot of concern, because bass fishermen are on the Potomac and all of a sudden they're catching all these snakeheads, and they're an exotic species. They're native over in Asia, and they are very popular over there for cuisine. And so somehow through, just like many exotics, they're transported over here for people to eat them, to have them as pets, whatever the reason may be, but they found their way into ponds and small waters up in Northern Virginia, and then they found their way by whatever means into the Potomac River, and they found the Potomac to be just a real great habitat, a great environment for them. They are spawning and reproducing and growing well and feeding well, and it's just a prime environment for them. So the snakehead population is just really booming. Now, because they're an invasive species, there was a lot of concern. Are they going to destroy or interrupt or interfere or hurt the existing populations of all the fish that we as anglers like to catch so much, whatever it may be? And there is a concern with that. But I think over the years what's proven to be the case is they've found their niche. They're in the system. They're probably not going to go anywhere. They still are, what the department has asked, and all agencies, that when you catch them, that you actually kill them immediately. Don't release them alive. And so they're trying to minimize the effects of the population. But one of the great things about them is that they're great to eat. They're apparently delicious. I have not had one. I want to go fish the Potomac. I want to catch one. I want to keep one and eat it because I've heard they are just fantastic. But this angler was fishing for bass on the Potomac River, fishing the Occoquan River and tributary off the Potomac, and he caught this huge snakehead weighing 18.37 pounds. And he's still waiting with IGFA to verify that as a world record. But Virginia is just something's happening. What's in the water, Anthony? There's,
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah. There is something going on with all these state records and world records. I can't remember. I've been with the agency for nearly 8 years, and I can't recall a season like this of about a year span with this many records. So this is really a special time. I'm happy to see all these big fish being caught.
How much do you think the DGIF and the conservation efforts play a role in some of this? It just really seems like, from our conversations, Virginia is very conscientious about the wildlife in this state, preserving wildlife and making sure that these species have an opportunity to grow and thrive. Do you think that plays a role in it at all? I don't know. Maybe it's just a shot in the dark.
Well, it may be. I think I would love to hear what a biologist, one of our fisheries biologists, says about that. But I would say that our fisheries biologists are very professional. They take what they do very seriously, and they're definitely watchdogs over the waters. They're sampling and testing our public waters and keeping track of populations. They work with anglers. They listen to anglers. Recently, Bugs Island Lake experienced a decline in the bass population, especially the larger 3-pound-plus fish. And our biologists worked with the bass anglers, theorized and determined that most likely it was largemouth bass virus, which is a virus that works through a system. It seems that larger fish fall prey to it, but once it works through the system, you have a stronger, more resilient population that resists that, and then the population actually sees an increase after that. So I think we're in that phase at Bugs Island now where it's starting to return. And so I think that definitely, Anthony, has to be a factor. Without the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries and our biologists, who knows what our fisheries would look like, what wildlife would look like. So certainly that's a component. I think the fact that this many records are being caught right in a row, I'm not sure that could be pointed to anything specifically. It just happens to be something that's just taking place. And they've been caught in such a diversity of areas, from the Chesapeake Bay to Claytor Lake in the western part of the state, to the Potomac River, to the white perch was caught in a pond, and the drum was caught at Bugs Island, and so is the catfish. So you got all 4 corners of the state, these records are being caught. So I'm not sure if it's something in particular, but it really is neat to see all these big fish being caught. And, Virginia's in headlines with some great fish catches, and it's a good thing to say that, hey, come to Virginia. We've got some big fish. We got some good things going on in our waters.
Speaking of, we need to get out there and go fishing. I know the baseball season's about to come to an end, which is a good thing. Only about 3 weeks left, barring no postseason. We'll see on that. But regardless, I'm anxious to get out there and take the tackle to the water with you. I'm
ready for that too. And our schedules didn't align in the spring to get this done before baseball season, but the end of the season is going to correspond perfectly with fall and the cooler weather coming in, the cooler nights, the leaves changing, and that is my favorite time. I love it. I love when it starts to cool down. The fall fishing is so fantastic. Not only is the fishing good, because the fish, whatever species you're after, they're feeding up prior to wintertime. The bait fish are congregating in specific areas and tightening up in their schools, and it's a great feeding opportunity. And then it's just beautiful out there. The leaves changing. It's such a nice time of year. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be ready for the season to end and for you and I to get out there and go fishing.
Chris, it's been way too long. Good catching up with you again.
Good to be back on the show. Good to catch up with you as well.
Chris Dunnavant for the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, our weekly wildlife conversation here on the weekend with Anthony Opperman. Stay tuned. We'll bring this show to a close when we come back.
The show is almost over, but the weekend is just getting started. More of The Weekend with Anthony Opperman is next on Sports Radio 910.